It's Saturday evening. It's time to talk about the very best comic books in the world this week. And we have a brand new guest on the channel, fresh-faced Drew. Never seen him looking this young. You look like you're about 12. What happened to your face?
Yes, I am Doppelganger Drew, and I am currently taking the cayenne pepper and water that famous Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers is taking, and it is fantastic and has done wonders for my youth.
Man, speaking of Halloween, that's a fucking nightmare. You should grow the beard back.
It's no shave November, so yeah, I shaved it once, October 31, Halloween. You know, hey, good to be another person on Halloween. So this is my mask. So it's growing back the rest of the year.
My goodness, it's a little bit embarrassing, but we do have some comic books to talk about. Starting out with what I would term was the best Halloween book of 2024. Shockingly, Poison Ivy, Swamp Thing, Feral Trees, G. Willow Wilson writing, Mike Perkins on art. I've enjoyed to a degree G. Willow Wilson's Poison Ivy run. I don't think it's fantastic, but there are elements of it that I appreciate. I always like Swamp Thing. I jumped in here, and I do like Mike Perkins' art on Swamp Thing. And this is actually a really good, like, atmospheric horror book with a pretty interesting mystery. Why are the trees kind of going nuts and doing bad things to people? And all the agents of the green have been drawn in there, not just Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing, but other members of the, like, Parliament of Trees and everything. And I was pretty surprised that G. Willow Wilson actually let Swamp Thing say some pretty critical, interesting things about Poison Ivy along the way. And this was a real shocker for me. I didn't think she would be able to pull this off, but I thought it was an excellent comic.
Yeah, you're right, Wes. Initially, I did not want to read this. I didn't because, one, it said G. Willow Wilson, and two, it said Poison Ivy. Because, look, I'll be honest here. I recommended the first several issues of Poison Ivy. They were damn good. But G. Willow Wilson went off the border in her crazy kookiness, and I'm like, this is no longer fun. So when I saw that, I wasn't going to. But I came to my senses. I enjoyed it, despite the first page of seeing Harley Quinn on there. That one cringe moment. I'm like, I don't want to read this, but I kept going, and it was fantastic. You're right. It is a great horror comic, very moody, very atmospheric. And she does a great job of contrasting Swamp Thing to Poison Ivy. Their differences, their motivations, their emotions. You really just see how much angrier Poison Ivy is, especially toward humanity, just how much more vicious she is. But you said it briefly. One of the best moments in this book, and honestly, the fist pumping moment is at the very end when Swamp Thing puts Poison Ivy in her place. It is fantastic. It's been a long time coming. And if you're a Swamp Thing fan, you're going to love it. And I enjoyed it. And kudos to G. Willow Wilson for telling a great story here.
Absolutely. That was a big shocker out there. Didn't know what to expect. Really, really, really good comic book. We got a lot of horror-based stuff this week, obviously because it was Halloween. Now let's move over to the indie books and talk about some of the big winners there. We did get Redcoat #7, Jeff Johns writing, Brian Hitch, and others on art. I think Andrew Curry might be in there as well. Basically, one final goodbye from Simon Pure to a very old, on his deathbed, Albert Einstein, talking about the adventures that they went through and how Simon Pure still doesn't really believe in himself, that he's a good man. Not an action-packed issue. I think they probably could have thrown some images of some of the things that they were talking about, specifically with the Gettysburg Address, and thrown a little action in there just for you to look at. But as a character exploration and a goodbye to a major character for the first 6 issues, I thought it was pretty well done.
Yeah, it was. And I'm going to be honest here. When I was reading it and going through the art, I strongly believe this is some of the best art Brian Hitch has done since Ultimates 2. And that was over 20 plus years ago. The art in this is fantastic. How he draws Albert Einstein in this, it's immaculate. It's beautiful. It's a work of art. And yeah, it's a very moody comic. It's an interlude story, kind of like a 6.5, type story. It's an in-between. It's great storytelling wise because you got to have stories ebb and flow. And this is it's taken down a little bit. It's slowing things down. It's like, which is fine. I can absolutely go along with that. And I enjoyed this here. It really shows that relationship that the two of them had over all these years. And you really do see Simon, you really see him have a great human moment and throughout this whole issue. You really just see him come to his humanity and just see what happens at the end of this book, how he feels. It's like, oh my God, he does have a heart. He isn't a complete selfish prick. And for all that I just said, as well as what you mentioned prior, the things that they tease that they're setting up that didn't really show, I hope they get back to this. I would love to see some of these, especially the Gettysburg Address event. Yeah, this is a fantastic issue. Strong recommend. Like you said, it's not action-packed, but what you get depth-wise from the characters, it's beautiful.
Definitely setting us up for whatever is coming next for Redcoat. We got a new story arc coming in the not too distant future. Also going to recommend Uncanny Valley #6, Tony Fleecs writing, Dave Walker on art. I've really enjoyed this series, and I will admit Tony Fleecs and Dave Walker really do shoot for the stars on this one. They try to go real big and tie in kind of the lore of everything going in Uncanny Valley, where you have humans, but you also have a cartoon world, and they kind of cross over and everything. I don't believe that they fully connect on all the things that they go for, but the art is spectacular. The storytelling is really interesting, and they really, really did go for it. And I do appreciate it when writers really try to nail something this big, and I think by and by, it's a very good issue.
Yeah, it's a very good issue. I really enjoyed it. It's very shocking. Like you said, this is something big that they're doing. They're pretty much going back to the origin of everything, and how that world is intertwined with our world, and how what happens here happens there. And not just that, but the art-wise, the art styles change drastically throughout this book because they're illustrating different characters through history. You know, you get your Steamboat Willie, then you get kind of like the Mickey Mouse Sorcerer's Apprentice, Mickey Mouse, and then you get other characters throughout time. It's fantastic stuff, and I can't begin to imagine that this was an easy issue to draw. And later on, like you said, we get where the sun came from, as well as the shocking last page. It's a little Grant Morrison-esque, but I can absolutely go with that in this story. It's a fantastic issue. It's setting up a lot. And yeah, I got to give them all the credit in the world for swinging for the fences on this issue. This is a lot of fun.
I assumed Uncanny Valley was going to be a 6-issue miniseries. Apparently, it might be an ongoing, or at least it goes at least 12 issues. So we got some more story to tell there. Also going to recommend Nightclub 2, #3, Mark Miller writing, Juan Ramirez on art. And as much as I like Poison Ivy Swamp Thing, and I thought that was the best Halloween book that came out, I think Nightclub 2 might have been the best comic book I read this week. I was pretty blown away on what Mark Miller was willing to do with some of these characters. Basically, all the comeuppance that you could ever want, trying to turn that girl. It turns out that she was using him, and then finally figuring out everything that's been put in motion, and everybody is screwed because that guy was a moron.
Yes, he was an absolute moron, thinking with his other head, if you will. And I love this aspect of Mark Miller and his storytelling. We get this from everything he does. He does a great job of putting our heroes at the lowest possible level, where we strongly believe and think there is no way they're going to be able to come back from this. And I love that. And I love that. That is this issue right here. It's like, what happens to our heroes in this? How? And I hope Mark does a great job explaining how they're going to be able to triumph from this, because he's got a lot of work ahead of him. But yeah, this is a fantastic, violent, moody. When I say moody, like very emotional. Like you really just see like the one character, like how he felt betrayed by the girl he thought loved him, and she was like, "How the fuck could I like a fat vampire like you? It's disgusting." I'm like, you really feel bad for the guy, even though he was a complete dick in the previous volume. But and what these new vampires more or less do to our heroes, it's rough, it's graphic, and Mark, what are they going to do next? How are they going to come back from this? I got to know. This is a great cliffhanging issue. Strong recommend for Nightclub.
Definitely, Mark Miller is on his A game. So happy to have some Middle World stuff coming back, and we got a lot of it going on right now, including our next recommendation, The Magic Order 5, #2, Mark Miller writing, Matteo Bafangi on art. And I believe Mark Miller might have said this is maybe what he considers the best comic book issue maybe he's ever written. And it is very, very strong. I still maybe like Nightclub 2 a little bit more. But there's a point in this book where you show Cordelia Moonstone, where she's in the predicament that she's in. She woke up in the last issue basically on a new body. And you start thinking, well, maybe all this stuff was a dream. But then he introduces this kind of new badass kind of cowboy type magician character that really ends up stealing the show by the end. And it is a bit of a mind trip in this one. I think it's really, really well done. And Mark Miller is kicking ass and taking names, not just with his storytelling, but finding the right artists for these books.
Yeah, absolutely. He does a great job of finding these talents that a lot of us, let's be honest, a lot of us aren't familiar with. A lot of us don't really know them. And this is a great way for us to really get exposed to these artists, and hopefully they have greater exploding careers in the future. But yeah, this issue, I would say it's not the best. It's great. Like what I was disappointed with. I mean, I'm going to recommend this. I love this book, but I really wish he had kept it going where Cordelia, we think she has lost her mind. We think this is all made up. I think this could have gone on for another issue or so, but he has her come back to her senses more or less about halfway through the book. I'm like, oh no, Mark, you pulled it too soon, man. And it's like I really thought that should have gone on a little bit longer. But yeah, the introduction of this new magic character, this Western cowboy guy, I love it. And what they're setting up at the end, I cannot wait for the next issues. Yeah, this is a fun read. Strong recommend. Magic Order. Mark is firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I cannot wait till they actually put that thing on Netflix. It sounds like it's going to be a show or something like that, but they got a lot of stuff to chew on with that one. You're also recommending Feral #7, Tony Fleek's writing, Trish Forstner on art, and the further adventures of the cats that are basically in a zombie rabies apocalypse type of universe. And now we've got 3 little kittens that have been brought into this that they need to protect, and they might get themselves a little bit of trouble at this point. And we see some pretty nasty looking rats as Feral kind of keeps marching along.
Yeah, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. I hate cats. I do not like cats, but Trish and Tony have done a great job of getting me to care for these characters, especially when you have a litter of kittens that our heroic cats are trying to raise and keep safe, especially from these rats. But we do also learn as we go throughout the issue, cats really can't help themselves, especially when they see a delicious fish out in the wild. And things happen to them. And are they going to be safe? Are they going to make it through? And not just that, but what happens at the end of this issue? Are they going to stay in the barn even though there's rats there? You got to read to find out. This is a fantastic issue. And if you're like me and you don't like cats, this story will change your outlook on cats. And if you love cats, I'm sure you're going to love this book because Trish does a great job of pulling on your heartstrings with this book. As soon as I picked this up, I told Trish, you better not break my heart with this book. You better not. And she got a good laugh out of that. But yeah, this is a fantastic series, fantastic issue, strong recommend.
I've read all 7 issues and I still hate cats. Just say it.
I don't like cats either, but I like the cats in this book. I'll say that.
The final indie recommendation this week, it happened on Hyde Street, Devour #1, Maytal Jute writing, Leela Lee on art. I disagree with you on this recommendation in particular, Drew.
Oh.
While I do think there was a story to tell in this comic book, I don't think the art was particularly great. But the story itself is so prolonged. It's so much longer than it actually needs to be to tell the story that's happening. And then everything that's revealed by the end was so thoroughly predictable by anybody that's watched, I don't know, Twilight Zone or any type of horror anthology show that I wish they'd cut, 20 pages out of the book. I think it would have been a lot more enjoyable, but it meandered along way too long there in the middle for me. So it's hard for me to recommend this one.
I could see where you could say that. However, with me, I think like you, I love the Twilight Zone, and I really love the first issue of Hyde Street, and I couldn't believe they're already having a fill-in issue more or less for this. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Only after 1 issue, but I was shocked by this because it resonates with me more because growing up, I dealt with the weight problem. I had real weight issues, and reading an issue like this, when you see, a mother, the daughter dealing with these weight issues, doing whatever they can. The one daughter getting ready for her wedding, running, dieting, doing everything she can. She can help herself, but then you see what this grandma did at the beginning of the book. She does it for her granddaughter, but then we just see that cycle continue throughout the book as well as at the end. It has a very, very creepy, disturbing ending. What happens to a certain character, and yeah, like you said, it is kind of predictable. But I think if you're like me and at one point or another in your life you dealt with something like this, it can resonate and it's very terrifying. This is why I got to recommend this book.
No problems there. We could disagree from time to time, but I came out with a different experience on that one. So that wraps up our indie books. We got nothing to recommend from Marvel, and I made a complete video about that one, what a shitty week this was for Marvel. But we do have one more DC comic book to recommend, the Penguin Special #1, Jeremy Adams writing, Howard Porter on art. Mostly these are reprints of older issues of the Penguin. Obviously, you got the TV show. We've also got the Tom King, I think, Penguin thing that just ended up. But the Jeremy Adams story in particular, it's only probably 12 pages. It's the only new material in there, Howard Porter on art. And this is probably the most terrifying version of the Penguin that I've ever seen, as he kind of sits there talking to his wife that he has subdued, and the way that he treats her orderly and the nasty stuff that happens in there and the way that he speaks to her was just so vile and disgusting. I didn't imagine that Jeremy Adams was going to be great with villains. You know, he seems like a nice guy. He's a family guy. He tends to hone in on the heroes and the family aspects of them. And he definitely made the Penguin the most disgusting family man in the history of comic books to me.
Yes, and I will say this is probably the scariest book I could have read on Halloween. This is by far the scariest book this week. Penguin's personality in this book. He is an absolute monster, what he does to this woman. And I couldn't, my jaw was dropped. I read this 3 times because like you said, I couldn't believe Jeremy Adams wrote this. And I'm like, this is so damn good. It's so grand. It's so terrifying and creepy. It's like, Jeremy, what the hell? Where'd this come from, man? Because it's so different from everything else he's written. And he does it. He killed it. It's like, why is he not writing The Penguin? Why is Tom King over here? It's like, I want Jeremy Adams writing this now. Get rid of Tom King. Get rid of that guy. Get him out of here. This story is fantastic. And like you said, in the back of this issue as well, there are backups. One is like the first appearance of the Penguin, but the other one as well is one by Alan Grant and Sam Keith on interiors, telling like more or less the origin of the Penguin. And it is beautiful. It is so dark. It feels like a great Vertigo story. Yeah, this book. But ignore the Jason Aaron story in the back. Don't read that. Never happened. But everything else in this book, 3/4 of this comic book is the strongest it recommends, especially the first one by Jeremy Adams. He told arguably the scariest story this week on Halloween week.
Well, very nice. Definitely appreciate that. If you'd like this and other things of that nature, you need to go to Thinking Critical Patreon. That's the best way to support us. And you get awesome podcasts like the Hot or Not Show, where we cover everything, whether it be good, bad, and everything in between with Jim from Weird Science. We've also got 2 podcasts with Doc. We got another podcast with Aaron. Lots of fun stuff going on there. There's a link in the video description to the Patreon. Hope to see you there very, very soon.